doesn't really matter what I ask her to do right now. She's gonna argue with it. Yeah, you got your hands full here. The more control we have, the better we feel, but the worse they feel. This is like very different so far. That's the first like, whoop. Hey everyone, welcome back to another video. In this one, I'm gonna be working with the out of control yearling for the second time. I wasn't super thrilled with the first session because I spent 80% of the time reacting to all the things she was throwing at me. And I would like to get that ratio flipped around where I'm spending 80% of the time teaching her positive habits and good things that we'd like her to be doing. So let's get into this second session. So yeah, I'm very excited to work with her today and see if there's any changes that are made. Because again, I'm curious about yesterday if it was her getting on a bit of adrenaline and getting bothered, or if it was like just those boundaries was new to her and she had to test the waters more. Because that was very committed. Like that was very, very committed. That was for real. I mean, I work with a lot of horses, and for a yearling, that was very committed. So my goal today is to work with her a little bit and establish some of those boundaries, but interrupt the pattern earlier. Like I wanted to see what you were doing, so I had you test a few things with her on the first session, and then it escalated very quickly. And so today I wanted to see if right away, if we can just start off on the right foot. And so I'm kind of gonna build up a little bit to the circles. I wanna see if we can create a few of these yields. But for a lot of times, you know, doing less sooner saves you from having to do more later. And so now that I know her a little bit more, I can just play a little bit with this connection stuff before we get going on some of the things that might be harder, which might be, the harder part might be circling, changing directions, maybe pushing her out, away a little bit more. But there's like smaller bite-sized pieces that we can do. So real small would be just walking, leading, and asking her, see, instead of pulling on the rope, what I don't want to do is pull on the rope. I want her to choose the different yields. So the rope is kind of here as a safety net. So if I need it, I'll use it. But like here, if I back up, I'll show her the boundary with the stick. And that's different. There's two types of boundaries. You could set a boundary with the halter, but I could also set a boundary with this. This is what I think she was missing, was like a physical boundary in front of her of what we would call driving pressure versus steady pressure from the halter. And they need to know both. And in the beginning, when a horse is completely unhandled, steady pressure is the one that you need to teach them to give and follow a feel. So she already has that. She kind of was pushing through it a bit, so we needed to fix that. But the driving pressure is ultimately more effective because it's like the halter, I'm telling her back up right now. When I wave the stick in front of her, I'm not telling her to back up, I'm saying it's uncomfortable to be right here. And then when she backs up off of it, the relief is there. So they interpret it a little bit different than kind of how we see it. We might see it as, well, you made her back up either way, but they see it differently. So it's like, instead of telling them where to be, it's like showing them where not to be, and then they make a choice to be over there. So that's like one of the little differences in kind of how I try to set things up when possible. Again, hard yesterday with everything that was going on. But when I can get proactive about what I'm doing, like what I'm doing now, I want them to make a decision, because that's more of like a connection base. They chose the answer versus I made them do it. And you can get a horse to be obedient and make them do all kinds of things, but you'll never get, in my opinion, you'll never get as much rapport and respect and effort out of them as you would if they're choosing the answer versus being told to do the answer. The horsemanship journey can be a challenging one, filled with a lot of obstacles that come up along the way. And it can be a lot easier if you have a coach to help you through it. I'd like to be your coach, and I can do that on my Patreon page. I post a new video there every Wednesday, and I even answer your questions. So if you guys would like me to be your coach, go ahead and check it out. I'll leave a link in the description below. Let's get back to the video. Just for curiosity, before I circle her, and then see there, she went to walk, and even though it was a little baby mistake, I'm still gonna yield the hindquarters and still gonna release her back. But you see how soft that was compared to yesterday. So it's like, depending on her level of commitment, is match. I'm gonna do it just, her mistake, the way I corrected her was significantly bigger than her mistake, but it was still way smaller than what I did yesterday because she was so much more committed to it. And I would consider that to fit in the feel category, like how much feel are you putting in, how much feel are you getting back, you got to feel for them. So it's a real gray thing. It's like it's hard to choose that at all times. Very good. And see, I like that. She ran into the halter, but that was all it took for her to stop. And that's why I say you can't just pick up their foot like this and expect it to be perfect. You have to have some effort of giving them a starting point to hold it. But from there, if they're really committed, you got to feel, go, okay, that's too committed to leave. I need to let it go. Because like a lot of farriers will try to hang on to the foot, and that's okay to a degree, but there's a point where the horse is too committed to pulling away. You're better off letting them have it and then making that hot lava. I call that hot lava. Now we're going to make that uncomfortable now that you have your foot back, and then all of a sudden holding it for the farrier is not as big a deal as it was previously. So back to my analogy with little bite-sized pieces. So like instead of pushing her off while she's going forward on a circle, we could practice driving her front end around. So I'm making it easy for her by kind of being in front of her, so I'm blocking her with my personal space a little bit, and then driving her off the stick. Very good. This is like very different so far. This goes back to what I was saying of like, why you want to do it multiple days in a row, because like, even though we finished okay yesterday, the majority of the session was not very okay. And so you got to get it to where more than 50% of the session, like ideally 80-20. Yesterday we had 80-20 the wrong direction. We had 20% it went okay at the end, and 80% it was chaos for a while. But I'm glad that she's doing it this way, because now you can see what I'd like to be doing with her. Like if she was at my house and my horse, and this is what I'd just be putzing around, getting little yields here and there, you know. And so my goal is when I'm working with a horse, like sometimes things get going and they get bothered and it's stressful or it's emotional or it's hard, but I try to not be the one who started it. Does that make sense? And so that's what you see me doing is I'm not trying to start it. I'm still going to get the yields, but it's like we can have a conversation about those yields instead of me having to manage that energy. And it would be really shocking if she didn't do anything today. But like right there, see that? Tap with the stick, don't just pull on the halter. So like now things are slow enough I can show you that. That's what I was trying to do yesterday because there just wasn't enough feel. It didn't mean much to her to pull on the halter. And so that's a good example of where I'd like her to yield to that driving pressure. So when she's thinking out, it's more like instead of pulling her nose in, I want to yield her ribs and hip away. And so I'm holding here, but you see there's slack. And so I'm going to push. And then if she takes the slack out, then I am using the halter, but I didn't use the halter first. And that matters a lot. Because it's kind of like whatever you use first, you'll always have to use. So like riding, we try to get people to use their seat, their life up and down when they want to do a transition versus just go to the reins or the kicking them right away, right? So it's the same idea here is like instead of pulling on the halter straight away, like there I had to because she was pushing on it so hard. But see, we interrupted it and we kept things a little more low-key or a lot more low-key compared to what it was yesterday. And now she can process what just happened. Like that's a learning moment right there. That's probably more important than how many circles she does around me today. It's like her learning that there is a boundary that she's got to respect going around there. So see how that hip and ribs come in right away? That's where I'm pushing that out. I want her to get a little more understanding of, hey, I want you to come around me, but my bubble goes out all the way around here, and you need to stay out of that. Because if she kicks out, that's going to hurt. But she can be rambunctious and playing around, and as long as she's further away from you, everything's okay. As long as she's not pulling the rope out of our hands. Ooh, I like that position. See, I'm setting a boundary here with my hand. And I'm trying to help her find that circle. Ooh, I like that. I like that. Again, let her process. So I'm using the rope to control, but I'm trying to make the discomfort come from tapping her with the stick and string versus just pulling on the halter. And you can see, once it was like she wasn't in control, then she starts whinnying off to the herd. That's where it switches to a little more right-brained about like, oh, I'm not okay now that I can't do what I was planning on doing. But like she's more thoughtful, thinking through everything today. So there I asked her, and then I tapped her lightly, and now I'm going to ask again. And what I mean by that is, with this type of horse, what you don't want to do is just push, more pressure, until she finally goes. You would be better off asking her to go, like I'm clucking, I'm bringing the stick up, little tap, and now I'm going to reset. Bring my life back down, point, go through those cues again. This gives her a better chance to think about what I'm asking for versus just making her go faster and then getting into chaos. Thank you. Because again, you picture you're riding her. It's like, well, if it's the first few rides, there's only so much pressure you want to put on before the first step's a doozy. But my recommendation for you would be, when you're practicing this, because of how much she wants to pull, I would be in a round pen. Well, I'd like to get a little circles this way. This seems to be a slightly harder side. But again, you see me, she's less committed, and so I'm able to catch her a little earlier today. But see here, I want her to step off there, a little bit of over, without leaving. I might make it a little bit easier for myself by doing this. When you're holding just the rope with your hand, you're relying on just your grip strength. But I don't know if you can see there, it's a lot easier for me because it kind of creates a bind around my butt as I'm hanging on here, and then I don't have to rely. Your grip strength is the first thing that's going to go, as long as you have your base set when a horse is trying to pull. She's pretty committed to that. And you're saying she's only gotten away from you a couple times?
Yeah.
What's interesting about this is I'm being pretty clear, and she's trying like every option she can think of multiple times to figure out how to avoid just going on a circle. There's a good noise. It's releasing some tension there. At least things are slow enough today you can kind of see what's happening. Because like I know she's not on adrenaline right now. She's uncomfortable. And she's learning to circle. So I'm not saying like she's an expert circler that's refusing to do it. She is learning how to do it, but it's just interesting how little she's asking questions and how much she's trying to just not do it. I hope you guys can kind of see that. And again, this would be much easier if I was in the round pen. But part of me wants to let her work through it a little bit. There's a point where you can set things up and make it too easy. And so what I'm hoping is that I can help you get through this spot with the halter. There we go. That's the first whoop. I was hoping that was the first release to forward that we had. But hopefully she found a little bit of relief going forward. What's funny too is I moved down to the gate thinking it was coming out this way that she really wanted to. Now she's trying to shoot off that way. So that's what it just shows you. It's not really about a particular thing. It's overall just her needing to turn loose to accepting leadership from the human. And for me, leadership is anytime we're asking them to move their feet in a certain way. So in this case, it's me asking her to go in a circle without leaving town. And normally, when I get a little effort, you know, I would stop, but I don't feel like she's made really a conscious choice just yet to try to look for the idea that I'm offering her of just walking a circle around me. Because like she doesn't go hardly any steps before she thinks out again. There. A little better there. That was the first moment I felt like I could release her a little bit on. And so with that, I'm going to leave circles alone. And I think we'll mess with the feet now. Again, it wasn't much, but it was like a slight bit of effort of she just walked a few steps without trying to leave. And then we'll go ahead and go to these feet now. You can see she's kind of defensive over here, kind of blocking me. So I want her, I don't want to just me go over here. I want to block her there until she accepts me here on this side. And again, this is where I don't think it's as much about the feet. Like, it's definitely about her attention span. Like, she has a very short attention span. But, like, it kind of like doesn't matter what you ask her to do. She's going to try to walk off and go forward through it and go where she wants to go. And so you're going to notice I'm going to try to leave her in this position each time. So whenever I have to correct her, there's going to be part of a pattern of facing this way. So it's not as random as it might look. And then I walk back in here, same thing as I did on the other side, and pet her neck. And here she wants to turn, that's fine. And she even took a step back, that's fine. So this is acceptable ways to say she's not comfortable with something. But running forward is just the well that she goes to every time that we can't, she could do that too many times too easily and it's not going to work out. We're doing what she's doing now. Eventually, in a reasonable amount of time, she's going to stop right there. And then I'll stop and retreat. Oh. Now there, again, when I got a hold of her there, that's not a yield, that's a block. It's like, I never told you to walk off. You just took off. You left. You know, literally, that is the equivalent of you're riding a horse and they take off on you. It's the same thing, because in her mind, she was leaving right there. Does that make sense? And so that's, if I was asking her to back up, I would do it like this, very softly, get a step, you know, where it was a yield. So you approach it differently. When it's a block, you have to interrupt that pattern. So you're going to have to get really good at blocks. And again, we're going to try to set her up for the farrier to eventually do it out here at first. If you guys are okay with getting some trimmings on the ground in the arena. Because usually what happens is the more control we have, the better we feel, but the worse they feel. And so I think ultimately when she learns to stand still, doing her feet out here will actually be easier than in the stall. There, she thought about moving and she held it and waited, and we'll put it away. I'm happy that she doesn't, in my opinion, doesn't really have a farrier problem. It's this other stuff, but possibly this could be a bigger thing because it's an overall skill set to tackle. But for me, it's nice to see a horse that hasn't learned to be really bad with the farrier just because of the farrier or just because of having her feet done. But I also don't think she can handle a whole lot more than I'm doing today. Like, that's kind of where she's at. And from each day, I'm doing it longer today than I did yesterday. We did all 4 feet today, but we have to still, respect that she's a yearling and we got to build this kind of gradually. I'm going to finish on the circle just because that was so bad. And let's check it again here on the left. So on the left, we can have a conversation about doing a circle. Everything seems pretty cool. So not great, but better than the other way. Would you agree? Yes. Yep. So let's try the other way here again. Better. and we're gonna be happy. We're gonna be happy with that circle. So again, we gotta look for things to catch her being right on, you know. It's like, well, we want to trot, we want to canter, we want to keep going, but just give her little moments to say, yeah, that was it, because that was way better than what we had. So the only other thing that I would be working on would be getting her to go sideways a little bit. Because this, if we can get her to think sideways a little bit, this is going to make it a lot safer for you to not end up in that kick zone. And so what I'm going to try to do to make it easy is get her started this direction. Yeah, and you just get a couple of steps over like that. And again, I'm going to make it a little easier for her, but I'm kind of walking this way, kind of getting her started. And then I put the brakes on here on the front end a little bit, and then try to catch the hind end up a little bit. But when you're doing this, just be careful with that kick zone, like, because that will, her legs are longer than they look. Good. But this is a good spot for her to learn to kind of move off pressure laterally without leaving. I gotta be careful, I don't want that hip coming by me. Again, we'll get her started this direction, get a couple of steps over, and then we can come back the other way. All right, one last thing, we're gonna try that circle one more time. Yeah. It's the little things. I think we'll take a minute to appreciate that. Again, from where we started, how much she was pulling, how hard, we got to encourage that effort. Because that is the number one thing that overall I'm trying to build into a horse is try. Because essentially everything we do with them is not natural and scary to them. And so, but if you can get them trying for you and just put them in different situations where they try, because she was doing the opposite of try. She was trying to not do everything. And so when you can catch her in a good frame of mind where she's trying the right idea, keep encouraging that more and more and more, and you'll get more and more of this. You know, a horse that wants to cooperate, wants to get along. And so it's not about drilling for oil or how many repetitions you get on things. It's about catching her when she's trying and then setting boundaries when she's not trying and being firm enough that you're effective with her when she's trying to take over too much. But I'm thrilled. I think she was way better today than she was yesterday. We still got to work through a little bit more, but we got to spend more time being proactive than reactive. And it should be even better tomorrow because she was less committed to pulling away today. Whatever she did wrong, she just wasn't as committed, other than the rearing was a new one. And you can't blame her for trying some different things. She's got a few tricks up her sleeve. So why don't you come on over here and tell me what your takeaways are.
Kind of like I said yesterday, make sure I'm actually putting her in situations where she can practice learning skills as opposed to just kind of managing her where she is. That's probably a big one, to keep putting her in situations where there is like opportunity for growth.
Super. I like that. Opportunity for growth.
Yeah, I think that's a big one. I think also being more reactive to like little things and trying to stop them early. Because often I think before it would like escalate and I'd be like, I'm just going to wait this out. And then when she sort of settled down, I'd try again. But I'm sure that did just reinforce her thinking like, well, that's an option. I can cavort around, and then eventually when I get over it, I can stop. So to block her earlier in those, I just try to be mindful of what she's telling me.
Perfect.
Yeah, I think those are probably my two biggest things.
Super. I agree. We don't want cavorting around. I'll learn all kinds of new phrases to add into my repertoire here. So, well, thank you very much for having me out again.
Thank you so much.
And I think what we'll do now is we'll have you mess with her. I'll have you try a couple of these yilts.
Great.
And we'll go from there.
Cool. Thank you. But I would say that's probably enough, like that timed out for her in the session. And
I think we'll be good to go.
Yeah, cool. Thank you
All
so
right.
much.
Keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having us out again.
Yeah, of course. It was great.
I promise it's not as bad as you think it is. You're much cuter when you're nice and chill.